Right, well, I'm going to talk quickly, I guess about how to get rid of drug stigma, not, on a face-to-face basis, on a personal basis, but on a larger scale, like a global scale. And, how we should go about, well, I guess lifting the prohibition on drugs. I'll start first with the I don't know, the kind of like shame aspect of drugs that people have. That like I don't know, people who take drugs are seen often in a very bad light, as if what they're doing is inherently evil or something. You know, people who take drugs treated as criminals, when really most of the people who take drugs are just normal people, or drug addicts who don't have a choice, basically because drugs aren't legal. Essentially, because they don't have the right support. But if drugs didn't have drugs and alcohol, they'd probably still do the same things. There's plenty of fucking crazy people who don't take drugs or alcohol. There's plenty of crazy people who probably should take drugs and alcohol. And there's plenty of crazy people who take drugs and alcohol and it makes them better. So, yeah, go figure. But anyway, the way to take the stigma off is, well, I guess it's like admitting addiction. You have to admit that you have a stigma, I think that's the first stage, admitting and processing, I don't know. But yeah, you have to be somewhat open about it. Not entirely open, obviously. You don't have to, but this is how it would be done. I'm not saying you should go up to your boss and say, "Hey, I smoke methamphetamine," and he laughs or she laughs, and then you get your big bowl of meth out and you obviously shouldn't do that. You're just gonna get fucking fired for no reason. But what I mean is, if you're in a position like I am to make videos like I do on these experience reports, that's a good start. If you're a normal person, it's even better. Unfortunately, I'm not, but I'm still going to try to do this and put this point across. The reason why it's good to do these experience reports, it's better to do it with a camera like this so people can see your face. Sorry about my half-sided beard. Some old Latino guy he's just crazy. He couldn't cut my hair properly. I just left his salon. Anyway, it's good to post on forums of these experience reports, because that shows that actual people take these drugs and they want to take them safely, and they want to register how it feels and improve experiences, not just drug experiences but life experiences in general, right? But the reason it's better for on video is because when you see comments on forums and when you see comments on the internet, it's like seeing a faceless entity speak or whisper. It's like I guess probably when it was illegal to be gay, it was just writing on the walls, or it was just something that was sort of mentioned and there was writings of, but you never saw it happen. And this is where a lot of the shame came in of being gay. A lot of the stigma of being gay came in. And what the homosexual and LGBT community in general did to alleviate this was become open about it. And they overdid the stereotypes that people had, and showed that it doesn't matter what you think to us dressing as women or doing our things or very manly like lesbians. We're going to keep doing it, and we're going to be more and more public about it. And after a while of this kind of behaviour being in the public domain, it then becomes normal. And then you start to see, you see a lot of TV shows like we have, really, really gay culture, the extremes of gay culture and lesbian culture, the real stereotypes, real breaking stereotypes. And now what you're seeing is shows where they're just normal people, which is kind of, or at least in England we get that in America, which is kind of where that line between it becoming accepted and being a really radical movement, but nearly breaking the line to being normal, sort of gets penetrated and it becomes normal. When you just have two gay guys who, let's say they just live together and they just do the same as normal guys because they're just the same fucking thing. They just happen to be gay. It's the same with people who take drugs. Like, not all people who take drugs, and most people who take drugs aren't going to sit in an alleyway with an armful of heroin and just have a horrible life. In the same way, most people who are gay don't catch AIDS, and not all people who are gay are just twinks in bars who are extremely, extremely camp. It's the same thing. So, yeah, it helps to have that visibility, I think. It helps that people can see other people willing to put themselves on the line to show that it's not inherently evil as such. It's just something people do. Because it's not really inherently evil. Me, for example, snorting some cocaine, as long as I don't fuck with anyone else's life, I'm just doing my thing. It's not harming anyone else. Cocaine was a bad example because, well, it's not harming people now, I don't think, in Bolivia and Peru. It's not like it was, but back in the days it was, and it's killing a lot of people. But that really just leads into the whole, it should be legalized and regulated. I think the same with prostitution, but that's a different subject entirely. But yeah, it needs to be publicised more. The stigma needs to die. Arguments that need to be put forth surrounding the stigma, for example, in Portugal, where they have extremely lax drug laws. Say you're a heroin addict and you took an overdose, and you're with other heroin addicts. The stigma may, in England, for example, may stop you from leaving. You just die there, and the stigma from the drug dealer think, fuck, I'm off to jail. This is it. Just, I don't know, to leave him out the street. I'll let him die. And this person is more likely to die as a result of that. And let's say we've got a lady in Portugal taking heroin and she's on an overdose. Because the attitude is different to this kind of thing, they're more likely to get help. They're much more likely to go to a hospital in time, because they know they're not going to be penalised for it. The worst thing that can happen to them really is to just go to drug rehab for a couple of months, but they're not going to end up in jail with a permanent record on them, They don't have something against them all their life just because they wanted to have a fun time that didn't necessarily harm anyone else. Another thing to get over the stigma is... sorry. I'm just doing this. Yeah, I guess, like I said, making people aware that the stigma is a bad thing. It's not a good thing. Because the stigma often... when people have drug addictions or problems like that, if they're from a conservative family, or, if they have a major addiction, or it's verging on being quite fatal, where do they go? And this isn't just a unique thing to drugs. This is with really anything. Where do you go? So you have to destigmatize people in order to allow them to have help, and you have to allow them to express these things, or they repress them forever. That's at least how I feel about it. Another thing with the stigmatization is the whole, oh, well, they're all criminals, they're all violent and such. Look at the drug cartels in Mexico. That's because it's an illegal product. For example, a weed dealer can beat up another weed dealer for their weed because the other weed dealer can't report that to the police, right? But if you come to my house and steal 100 litres of alcohol from me and beat me up, I can call the police, and that means that the business of trading alcohol isn't as violent. Although the taking of it's a little more violent than a lot of other drugs, definitely marijuana, I would say. But this, I'd say, a lot of the cause of the violence surrounding drugs is just because it's illegal and because there's so much stigma to it, and the sort of people who are taking it are more criminally versatile than the regular person, so there's a higher risk with it. But that's not because drugs are inherently evil or will inherently lead you to fucking crime. It's because they're illegal in the first place. Like, for example, shoplifting is inherently wrong if it's personal shoplifting. when you're shoplifting for a corporation, or if you're really desperate, it's a different thing. And if you're really desperate and you're stealing from someone who's got billions, it's a very different thing. To me, that's not morally wrong, but that's debatable. But if you're a very rich person and for no reason, not for revenge, not for any reason of spite, you go and steal from someone else who's poor, or just in general for no reason, and take something from them, that is inherently wrong, because you are hurting another person for your benefit for no actual reason. It's not necessary. Whereas with drugs, it's not inherently evil. You're not going to, kill someone by smoking marijuana. This reefer madness shit, it's been debunked many times over. I will grant that there are some drugs that can make you violent and aggressive, and you should learn about your drugs before you take them. And I think better drug education is another thing, but I'm digressing here. The point should be made that the reason why some drug users are quite violent, and why there's a lot of violence and kind of deceitful criminality and blackmail involved in the drug industry, is because it's illegal to begin with. Because of this, a large drug dealer who's shipping a large amount of cocaine is ready to kill national security forces, ready to kill military, and possibly have military grade weapons in order to do that, because they may have to do that in order to continue living. Because if you have £100 million pounds worth of cocaine, for example, or $100 million worth of cocaine on a boat, it's not that unlikely you might get killed whilst shipping it over a border. So with this mentality, it's more, it's obvious that people are going to be violent under this situation, because it's kind of a necessity if you want to make money from this kind of product at this time. And like I said, it's also a thing of opportunity, because people already know it's illegal. More predatory people will sell drugs in competition with less predatory people who sell or take drugs, and rob them and commit violence upon them, because they know they can't report it to police because they're doing something else illegal, and they have that fear of being arrested. If this didn't exist, your drug dealers would just be the same as people selling alcohol in supermarkets in reality. And you could probably put all kinds of information on it so people could read it, and take drugs more safely. That's another thing. Harm reduction is another thing in terms of legalizing drugs, and kind of, I don't know, lifting the stigma is the harm reduction. For example, say I give you some cannabis now, and it's 10% PCP. Okay, 10% is a bit much, but say it's laced with PCP. You aren't going to know necessarily. There's no standard, basically, is what I'm saying. I don't have any standard. I can give you whatever the fuck I want and tell you it's whatever the fuck I want to tell you it is, because there's no regulation to it. There's no standard for it. And because there's no one to regulate it, and because, you buying it or it's already illegal, it's more dangerous for you. I could say that I'm going to sell you, say, a prescription drug like modafinil, for example, and it's actually a full tablet of methamphetamine, because I want you to get addicted to a substance you have no idea about. This makes it a dangerous game. The fact that it's like this makes it a dangerous game, and suppressing this behaviour or not regulating it isn't such a smart idea when so many people in the world are drug users, and quite a lot of them are frequent drug users as well. It doesn't make sense to me, Then this is the other thing. Drugs can be used as medicine, right? It's been proven quite a lot with hallucinogenics such as ibogaine and magic mushrooms. Ibogaine has been shown to help people with addiction problems, and so has DMT and ayahuasca. And I've read a few studies where it suggested that magic mushrooms lead to neurogenesis in the brain, basically growth of the brain after taking them, and also that they can reverse some of the effects of depression. I'm not sure if that's because maybe I forget which part, but there's a small part of your brain which they think shrinks when you have depression, and a few of the antidepressants actually reverse this effect, and I think magic mushrooms does the same by growing the tissue around this area. There's also a weird research chemical the US military, I think, spent a lot of money researching, which is quite a lot more potent than these antidepressants. But anyway, I'm digressing here. My point is, there are legitimate medical uses for a lot of these things. Not all of them, granted. There's probably not a legitimate medical use for methamphetamine, to be honest, except on lab mice. But, I can't argue for all of the drugs because they're not all medicinal, except maybe under really specific situations. Anyways, there are some drugs such as cannabis as well, which it's well documented that cannabis oils and certain cannabinoids are very beneficial and can be used medicinally. I'm not sure why some people disclaiming this or going against this idea. It's been proven pretty well that certain cannabinoids can treat pain, can treat epilepsy and other things, and I don't know. As well, another thing that annoys me with weed, right, is that I think there's quite a lot of omega-3 in weed. You can make clothing out of it, you can make paper out of weed. It's such a useful thing. You can eat it, you can make stuff out of it. It's so useful, all those stems that are wasted by dealers. You can even build building. It's called hempcrete. You can make hempcrete out of hemp. They actually do hempcrete in France. I think they're a massive supplier of hemp, if I remember correctly. And hempcrete, I'm not sure if it's legitimate or not, but I know there's a lot of hempcrete going on in France, and the buildings are very good, and they get stronger year on year as they absorb more carbon. So some of these things have a lot of legitimate uses as well. There was, I think, some kind of psychedelic that had really strange auditory hallucinatory effects, and they're looking into it because they think that it might be able to help scientists understand the hearing processes and what causes people to become deaf and how to reverse that. But there's legit medical uses, and as well, when we say drugs, there's a lot of drugs that are very narcotic and perfectly legal prescription drugs. There's a lot of drugs that aren't prescription that are quite narcotic drugs. I mean, alcohol is a very narcotic drug, but it's controlled and regulated. I think it would be much worse. In fact, it was much worse when it wasn't regulated. When there was prohibition, a lot more people died over it. Just like the prohibition on drugs. And another reason as well is because the producers, they can produce without worries. And as well, I think people have freedom to choose because this is a personal thing. There are a few things I would be against. I think, drug use in public should be limited to certain areas. And I think I think smoking marijuana should be limited to indoor use or specific areas. Just because, just as you have the choice to choose whether you're intoxicated or not, so do other people as well. For example, if I snort, 10 milligrams of 2CP and leave the other 10 milligrams on a table and someone licks that, they're now fucked, right? Just because I left that TCP on the table. Yeah, if I smoke, 50 joints in the same area and some old lady, is struggling to walk and I'm walking and helping it, she's fucked now. She's fucked. She can't concentrate for shit, right? So as well, there needs to be regulation on this. But this can be an open discussion when drugs are legalized, and I think recreational drugs will be legalized in time. We'll see it first with marijuana, and I think marijuana is the gateway drug as far as drug legalization goes. Marijuana is a gateway drug. And if you are going to try and promote the idea of drug legalization, marijuana is the best starting point. And if you want to get involved in protests or activism, marijuana legalization, that's where you want to be. All the 420 events, all the weed smoking stuff. I don't like it personally. I'm not that into marijuana culture, the whole hippies and lazy people eating that stuff. It's funny, but I'm too active. It bores me. It's annoying. I find a lot of the people, these kind of things, I don't know, to be full of themselves a lot of the time are just boring, plain boring to me. But it's a good place to be, and it's a good place to start, and it's a good place to, talk about the abolition of prohibition. Anyways, that's my video on how to get rid of basically, the shame of taking drugs, and yeah, also how I think people should go about legalizing drugs and lifting the prohibition on drugs. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I sincerely enjoyed making this kind of video, and I might make more videos like this soon, actually, and contact drug activists worldwide, because this is something I'm really interested in for reasons that aren't even just to do with drugs, that are also to do with civil liberties as well, because at the moment I don't really take drugs, but it's a civil liberties issue as far as I'm concerned, and it's a reduction of crime thing. There's a lot of reasons why it's a good thing. Anyway, I'll leave you on that. Thanks for watching. Hope I see you again, and enjoy your lives. And if you blaze, if you take your drugs, feel free to let me know. I don't give a shit. In fact, good on you. But if you don't, if you don't, that is your decision, and I respect you just as much, yeah? And anyone who's taking drugs should feel the same way, because it's not right to pressure people. Anyways, I'm off. Thank you, and goodbye.